It ran for 9 seasons and 200 episodes, but if you're younger than 35, you probably have no idea it exists. Coach kind of gets lost in the great 90s sitcoms conversation, and there are reasons for that I'll get into, but it's strange because it was actually one of the more successful shows of its era. In many ways, as you'll see, it was among the last of its kind. And the crazy part, the show almost didn't make it past the first season, and the ripple effects would have been bigger than people realize. This is the rise, fall, and disappearance of Coach, one of the most loved but overlooked 90s sitcoms. But first, like this video if you loved Coach back in the day, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Okay, let's hop in the DeLorean and go all the way back to 1988 and a guy named Barry Kemp. Kemp was one of the most respected sitcom writers in town who cut his teeth in the writer's room of Taxi alongside James L. Brooks of The Simpsons fame, then created Newhart. After Newhart launched, he started looking for his next big thing, and the idea that came to him was kind of personal. Kemp had grown up in the Midwest and graduated from the University of Iowa's Department of Theater Arts. He'd seen up close what life looked like in a small college town where the football coach is basically a celebrity. As Kemp would later put it, he wanted to write about a male character who is ambitious and had begun to question whether or not his priorities were straight. He pitched ABC and they threw a flag on the play, so to speak. They were worried that a football-centric show called Coach would alienate female viewers. So they flirted with titles like My Dad the Coach and The Fox before ultimately sticking with Coach. As a tribute to his alma mater, Kemp named the lead character Hayden Fox, after legendary Iowa Hawkeyes coach Hayden Fry. And pretty much every exterior shot of Minnesota State University you see in the show was the University of Iowa campus. Now, the cast almost looked completely different from the one fans remember, starting with the coach. For the role of Hayden Fox, Kemp originally wanted Dabney Coleman, with whom he had worked on the 1986 miniseries Fresno. But Coleman wasn't available when production ramped up, so the search began. Enter Craig T. Nelson, a guy known almost entirely for dramatic roles like the terrified dad in Poltergeist and starring opposite Meryl Streep in the nuclear drama Silkwood. Here's where things get spicy. Nelson was still furious with ABC. They had just canceled his previous series called Glory, a show he had poured his heart into. Now they wanted him to audition? Well, he thought that was outrageous. He showed up to the reading angry and basically threw the audition away, reading the lines flat with zero energy, pretty much daring them not to like him. The ABC executives sat there in dead silence. They were not impressed at all. But Barry Kemp saw something different. He had specifically wanted Hayden Fox to be a little dangerous, challenging, unpredictable, willing to take chances. And even in that terrible reading, Kemp saw exactly that quality in Nelson. He fought hard for him, telling the network, "I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but this is the guy." And that's how we got our head coach. The story about the assistant coach is just as crazy. For the role of Luther Van Dam, Kemp wanted Jerry Van Dyke and only Jerry Van Dyke. At that point, Jerry Van Dyke's career was kind of sadly a punchline. His resume was littered with failures, the worst of which was a 1965 show called My Mother the Car, which TV Guide ranked as the second worst television show of all time. So ABC refused to just hire him sight unseen. They wanted him to audition, which was a death sentence because Van Dyke was notoriously bad at auditions. So Kemp pulled a trick play, a Statue of Liberty of sorts. He told the network execs that Van Dyke was on a months-long national tour opening for Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet and physically couldn't come in, which was a big fat lie. Instead, he sent the network a tape of Van Dyke's guest appearance on Kemp's earlier sitcom Coming of Age, where Van Dyke was relaxed, in character, and actually funny. ABC watched the tape and approved him. Then, Kemp called Van Dyke and reportedly told him to lay low and stay out of LA for a while, just in case an ABC executive bumped into him at a restaurant or something, blowing his cover. Basically, he had to run out the clock. The other key piece of casting was Bill Fagerbakke as Michael Dauber Dubinsky, the slow-witted, sweet-natured assistant coach who somehow keeps accidentally graduating with extra degrees. Fagerbakke actually played college football at the University of Idaho until a knee injury forced him to call an audible. He followed a girl he liked into a theater audition and, well, a passion was born. Coach was his first television show. He told the LA Times years later, I just thought I'd be able to pay off my student loan. Little did he know that his portrayal of Dauber would impact pop culture for decades. More on that in a bit. Shelley Fabares was cast as Christine Armstrong, Hayden's girlfriend and eventual wife. Fabares was a known commodity already, having played Donna Reed's daughter on The Donna Reed Show and co-starred in 3 Elvis Presley films, including Clambake. She even hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 with Johnny Angel back in 1962. Rounding out the cast was Claire Carey as Hayden's daughter Kelly. She got the role because, quote, "They thought I was the most believable Midwesterner." Funny enough, she was born in Zimbabwe and raised in Santa Barbara, California. She was, as she put it, just feeling tired and low energy. Coach premiered on February 28, 1989 as a mid-season replacement, airing Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. The critical reception was lukewarm. The New York Times called the pilot painlessly affable and gave Nelson credit for his comic timing, but other reviews called the show formulaic, and the ratings were worse. Coach finished its abbreviated 13-episode first season ranked 72nd in the Nielsen's, not good, and ABC was ready to dump it, to the point where they didn't initially schedule it for the 1989-1990 fall lineup. Coach was indeed in a fourth and long situation and about to get punted, but it was saved by an even worse failure. ABC had a new show called Chicken Soup starring comedian Jackie Mason, which was supposed to be the lead out for the network's biggest hit, Roseanne, and it was an immediate flop, off the air within weeks. ABC needed something to slot in behind Roseanne, and fast. Coach was sitting there on the sidelines, already produced, cast, equipment on, ready to go. Literally a put-me-in-coach situation. So ABC shoved it into the post-Roseanne time slot as a placeholder, and that single decision changed everything. In Season 2, Coach exploded. Riding directly behind the #1 show in television, audiences finally found the show. Coach jumped from 72nd all the way to 18th in the rankings, and the good times kept coming. It held at 18th place in Season 3, and then in Season 4, the show climbed to #10 in the country and reportedly was the #1 show on television among adults 18 to 49. Craig T. Nelson took home the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. And in Season 5, Coach finished 6th. It was frequently pulling 25 to 30 million viewers per episode. Season 6 was more of the same, finishing again in 6th place. That season featured a fictional national championship win for the Minnesota State Screaming Eagles in a made-up bowl game called the Pioneer Bowl in San Antonio, with then ABC sportscaster Al Michaels providing commentary over actual footage of the 1993 Wisconsin-Minnesota game. For 5 straight seasons, Coach was a top 20 show, knocking on the door of the top 5. And then ABC fumbled the ball. For Season 7, the fall of 1994, ABC moved Coach to Mondays at 8 p.m., right before Monday Night Football. The idea was to build a football-themed night. On paper, that sounded clever. In practice, though, it was a logistical nightmare. You see, Monday Night Football aired live. On the East Coast, games started at 9 p.m. and ran to about 12:30 a.m. local time. That meant Coach could comfortably air at 8 p.m. and let the game start cleanly afterward. But on the West Coast, Monday Night Football kicked off at 6 p.m. and ran until 9:30 p.m., sometimes later with overtime, which conflicted with Coach. So local affiliates started shoving Coach into bizarre time slots. Some affiliates were showing new Coach episodes, get this, on Saturday afternoons. Predictably, ratings collapsed. Coach plummeted from 6th place to 53rd in viewership. ABC realized their mistake and moved the show to Wednesdays mid-season to try and stop the bleeding, but the damage was done. And for Season 8, to regain momentum, producers decided to refresh the show, and they really changed everything. They moved Hayden Fox out of college football and into the NFL as the head coach of the Orlando Breakers, a fictional expansion team owned by an eccentric widow named Doris Sherman, played by Katherine Helmond of Soap and Who's the Boss fame. It was a Hail Mary, but it worked. Coach climbed back into the top 20, ranking 14th in its 8th season, which, for a show that deep in its run, not too shabby. But 8 seasons is a long run for a sitcom, and retirement was on the horizon. In Season 9, which started in September 1996, the storylines pivoted hard toward parenthood, with Hayden and Christine adopting a baby boy named Timothy. And Jerry Van Dyke saw this as the jumping the shark moment, later joking that the show had run its gamut. We were into having babies. When you get there, you're in trouble. The show dropped to 64th place in the rankings. At this point, nothing could be done to save the show. The 200th and final episode, Leaving Orlando, aired on May 14th, 1997. In the final arc, Doris Sherman offers Hayden a long-term contract. Hayden and Christine retire to his Minnesota cabin to think it over, and when they walk in, they find 3 squatters living there. Their names are Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. Yes, the Larry, Daryl, and Daryl from Newhart, which Barry Kemp created back in 1982. Nice little Easter egg there. The final scene of the series featured the cast gathered on the soundstage thanking the audience for 9 years of the show. Jerry Van Dyke, in character still, refused to accept the show was ending. Now, after the show, the original cast went their own ways, but sometimes collided. Craig T. Nelson took the lead in the CBS crime drama The District from 2000 to 2004, voiced Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles in 2004 and Incredibles 2 in 2018, and played Zeke Braverman across all 6 seasons of NBC's Parenthood from 2010 to 2015. He had a recurring role as Coach Dale Ballard on Young Sheldon from 2017 to 2024, where, fittingly, he reunited on screen with Bill Fagerbakke. Shelley Fabares stepped back from regular on-camera work after 1997. She voiced Martha Kent, Superman's adoptive mother, on Superman, the animated series, and reprised the role in the Justice League. In October 2000, she underwent a liver transplant after being diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. She survived, then went on to produce the Screen Actors Guild Awards from 2004 to 2011. Jerry Van Dyke kept working steadily, including a run on The Middle alongside his older brother, Dick Van Dyke. Sadly, in 2015, he was in a serious car accident and his health declined. He died on January 5th, 2018, at his ranch in Arkansas at the age of 86. Claire Carey kept working, guest starring on shows like CSI, NCIS New Orleans, and Aquarius. And then there's Bill Fagerbakke, who had the most unexpected post-Coach career of anyone. In 1999, 2 years after Coach ended, he successfully auditioned for an animated children's show on Nickelodeon called SpongeBob SquarePants. He's been the voice of Patrick Star ever since. For the first few years of SpongeBob, Fagerbakke reportedly even referred to Patrick as Aquadauber. Had Coach been cancelled after season 1, he might not have built the national profile that helped him get the role of Patrick Star. Speaking of cancellations, let's talk about the Coach reboot. In 2015, a 13-episode sequel series was teed up with NBC, with Craig T. Nelson reprising his role as Hayden Fox, working alongside his son, who'd taken over a college football program. Bill Fagerbakke was returning as Dauber, and Barry Kemp was once again writing. The new series was going to write Christine off as having died a year before the events of the show, with Hayden returning to coaching as a way to cope with his grief. They filmed the pilot, and NBC didn't like what they saw. Execs felt that Kemp made the show he wanted to make, ignoring the network's notes. So they axed it and the pilot never aired. But in this situation lies the reason why Coach isn't talked about much these days. Coach is one of those shows that sits in a really specific place in television history. A shift was underway with sitcoms. By the early 2000s, shortly after Coach ended, shows were moving away from multi-camera laugh tracks towards single-camera, no-laugh tracks. Malcolm in the Middle, Arrested Development, and of course, The Office. And at the same time, television comedy transitioned toward bumbling dad tropes and less regionalized metropolitan settings, whereas Coach was a Midwest dad show of sorts. In fact, many felt the show lost its appeal when it moved out of the Midwest to Orlando. So by 2015, Coach felt dated when they tried to bring it back. And because there was no spin-off, and because there was no defining cultural moment, and perhaps because it rode the viewership coattails of Roseanne and Home Improvement, it was basically a harmless comfort show, much like Wings, that was enjoyable but with little cultural footprint. Barry Kemp himself called it the classic sixth man. A sixth man is valuable, but nobody puts the sixth man in the Hall of Fame. And perhaps it's a good thing the reboot didn't happen. For the show to work, it needed to be unrecognizable from what it was. So while Coach may not have gained a new generation of fans, its legacy was preserved. It remains a snapshot of the kind of big tent sitcoms that you don't see too often these days. Fans fondly remember the show that everyone could watch together before smartphones and iPads and laptops, and that's a legacy worth remembering. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give the video a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.